Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. It was during my high school days when I commuted to school by train. One day when the train arrived and I was getting on, a friend of mine who was going to school with me slipped in the gap between the train and the platform. There wasn't much distance between her and the train, and it stopped at her thighs. The conductor noticed, and instead of taking off, my friends and the people around us pulled her up. I knelt down and peered into the gap between the train and the platform to check the condition of her legs. Something was wrapped around her ankle and covered in blood, dripping down her thighs and knees. I couldn't make out what was going on, so I strained my eyes to take a closer look. To my horror, I realized that an adult hand was holding her ankle, although it was unnaturally small, like a doll's. As I stared at it, the hand suddenly moved away and disappeared. All she said was that her foot slipped, so I think she was probably the only one who noticed it. I didn't pursue the matter at the time because she was in a panic, but after I had sent her away in an ambulance, I was horrified to remember it again. It didn't feel like a ghost. Those hands were so realistic. I thought it must be some sort of mysterious creature. This happened at a deserted station in the Tohoku countryside. This was told to me by my friend. He is not the type to make up such stories, and I believe him. When he was in middle school, he used to commute to school by train. One summer day, he accidentally dozed off on the train and woke up just in time to hurriedly get off at a deserted, unmanned station in the mountains. When he checked the timetable, he realized there wouldn't be another train heading in his direction for about an hour. I got off too quickly. If I'd been more awake, I could have gotten off at the station with the shop and bought bread and juice, he grumbled as he made his way to the bench at the back of the platform. To his surprise, there were already some passengers sitting there. It was unusual to see so many people in such a remote area. As he approached them, his steps suddenly stopped. All of the people sitting on the bench were mannequins. Who put them there? He quickly turned on his heel and headed to the other side of the platform. He felt uneasy approaching the mannequins and didn't want to meet the person who had placed them there. He said he felt extremely restless until the next train arrived. I saw a thread a while back asking if anyone had ever seen a shadow man. I've seen one myself, so I'll write about my experience here. The shadow man I saw was a little different. The figure I saw was on the platform of the station, standing on the tracks. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. It wasn't pitch black, but a dark shadow, missing everything below the knees. A part of its head that touched its face had been gouged out. I thought it was abnormal, but at the time, I didn't have the chance to process it. The shadow man stood on the tracks under the platform, facing a train with its back arched and its arms raised to its face. I froze, unsure of what to do, with my palms slightly bent and facing outward. At the time, I didn't know about shadow people, so I was shocked, thinking, why is there someone on the tracks? The train is coming soon, it's dangerous. The shadow didn't react at all. There was an announcement that a train was approaching, but the shadow man didn't move. I panicked, thinking, wouldn't someone help me? If this continues, we're going to run over someone. Yet the others around me didn't even seem to see it. The train arrived at the platform with the sound of screeching brakes. I instinctively covered my eyes, thinking it was about to hit the figure. I couldn't help but scream. When I finally looked, the shadow man was still there. Its head and eyes were sticking up from the floor of the train as though it had sunk halfway into the platform. Then, it turned its head toward me. I saw a face with no eyes, no nose, no mouth, but it was definitely seeing me. I gasped and froze in place. Someone came up behind me, and I stumbled forward, bumping into the train. The person told me, if you're not going to get on, please step aside. I quickly apologized, saying, I'm sorry, and turned back toward the train. The doors were just about to close. The train departed with an announcement, and the shadow man was gone. But just before the doors closed, I saw that shadow clinging to one passenger's leg. I still wonder what happened to that passenger. The Keio Line platform in Shinjuku is underground. To get to the platform, you go down the stairs from the ticket gate. It was one busy day, and there was a man on the landing halfway down the stairs. He had an injured hand or arm, evidenced by the bandage he was wearing. He was a middle-aged man in plain clothes, carrying a folding bag. As I was walking down the stairs and was about to reach the landing, he appeared to miss a step and suddenly fell down the stairs. He tumbled into a line of 5 or 6 people waiting for the first train, causing quite a commotion as those standing on the platform were knocked down. I heard a yelp and, for a moment, feared that someone might fall onto the tracks. Luckily, only a few people fell onto the platform, and no one was seriously injured. The man who had fallen apologized profusely, and the scene was cleared up quickly. A few seconds later, a train arrived at the platform. Those familiar with Shinjuku Station on the Keio Line know that there is only one track between the platforms. This means that if you accidentally fall onto the tracks, there is nowhere to escape. Although this was a minor incident, it felt like it could have been something more serious. From my perspective, it seemed like the bandaged man wasn't just missing a step. He appeared to be running down the stairs intentionally. It struck me that his goal was always the queue for the train. I might have been the only one who saw him running from the start. The injury on his bandaged arm seemed to be fake as well, and his eyes had a strange, dull look. After that, everyone got onto the train as if nothing had happened. I, who had witnessed the entire series of events from the top of the stairs, also boarded the train. As I waited for the train to depart, I contemplated whether I should inform the station staff or the police. My thoughts were interrupted when I glanced toward the platform and met the man's eyes. He was wandering around the platform with no intention of boarding the train. His eyes seemed to be always on me. Eventually, the train departed, and he disappeared from sight. But the unease stayed with me that night when I got home. In the end, I didn't report the incident to the station staff or the police. I convinced myself it might just be my imagination and didn't want to blow things out of proportion. However, whenever I ride the Keio Line, I still remember that day. I wonder what would have happened if someone had fallen onto the tracks. Would I have testified then? Something happened recently at a coffee shop. I was just killing time when I started hearing a noise at the table next to me, a crunching sound. At first, I didn't pay much attention and continued reading my book. However, the noise persisted, even after about 30 minutes. I grew curious and turned around to see what it was. To my shock, it was a woman eating fingernails. Not just a few, but an unusual amount, enough to fill a 1-liter milk carton. These were not cut nails either, they were in perfect shape, as if they had just been peeled off. The woman appeared to be in her 30s, dressed normally, with a cup of what seemed to be coffee in front of her. What caught my attention the most was her hands. Upon closer inspection, I noticed she had claws. She was staring at me intently, and as fear overtook me, I hurriedly looked away. I felt an overwhelming sense of danger and decided to leave the coffee shop immediately. After exiting, I crossed the intersection and headed to the station. Among the bustling crowd, I felt a brief sense of relief, thinking I'd escaped her. However, at the station ticket gate, the woman appeared again. Despite the many people around, I maneuvered my way through the crowd, passed through the ticket gate, and reached the platform. The woman was nowhere to be seen on the platform, and I relaxed once I boarded the train. But just as the train was about to leave, she ran onto it, causing me to panic again. She stood in front of me, holding her strap. I froze as she silently took out the milk carton filled with fingernails and began eating them again. The train continued moving, and the woman did nothing but eat her nails. 2 stations before my destination, I lightly pushed her aside and got off the train. She did not follow me. To this day, I'm still baffled by what transpired. Maybe it's not too scary, but this happened a long time ago. We were planning to go out for drinks with my girlfriend's friend and her friend's girlfriend. Her friend's girlfriend had just finished work and was on the train heading to the local station where we were. I considered going into a store first, but with about 15 minutes until her train arrived, I decided to wait in front of the station. My friend headed toward the ticket gate to check the train timetable. I was sitting on the fence next to the railroad crossing, smoking a cigarette. The location was along a certain private railway line in Osaka. Despite being called Osaka, it was in the countryside on the outskirts, so it was a shabby station with few passers-by at night. That particular night was clear, with a bright moon and no wind at all. Because there was no wind, the cigarette smoke rose straight up like a stick. I was sitting there, staring blankly at the smoke coming from the tip of my cigarette, when suddenly, the straight smoke curved into a dogleg shape. Feeling uneasy, I casually looked to my left. Suddenly, a hand appeared around my waist. The arm looked burnt and had a black, keloid-like appearance. The blood vessels stood out in the moonlight, making it look very realistic. This black arm seemed to wrap around my waist, moving from the left side to the right. I jumped to the right to avoid the arm. When I looked back, it was gone. I quickly turned to my friend and said, "Did you see that? Something happened." It was scary. My friend, who doesn't believe in ghosts, looked at me coldly and said, "I don't believe in things like that." I couldn't get anyone to believe me. But it's a true story. It was just the day before yesterday. That day, I was late because I had to attend a talk with my seminar professor, so I took the last train home. Since my house was in the countryside and it was the last train, there was no one else in the car except me. There were still 7 stops before I had to get off, so I dozed off. Then I realized it was extremely cold. I initially thought the air conditioner was too effective, but something felt off. That's when I heard a sound, like a supermarket bag being crumpled. The noise was coming from overhead. When I looked up, I saw someone lying on the net rack where I usually put my luggage. I was sitting in the booster seat right next to the entrance, and the person was lying on the rack directly above the booster seat across from me, grinning widely. His hair was messy, his face had an earthy, purplish color, and his skin was cracked, making it hard to tell if he was male or female, young or old. The crunching sound seemed to be his breathing, mixed with that strange noise. His eyes weren't on me, but he was busy moving around. Instinctively, I felt I shouldn't make eye contact with him, but I couldn't look away. For some reason, I'd completely forgotten how to move my eyes. Even if I wanted to run away, the only way to escape was to pass by him. I was already panicking. He continued, muttering inaudible words and rolling his yellowed eyes. Just when I was about to reach my mental limit, I arrived at the station. I jumped out of the train as if I were rolling out. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw him looking at me. I had to walk 2 stations home, but I couldn't stand being in the same space as him any longer. By the way, I've been hearing crunching noises coming from the room next to me. But I want to believe it's just the cat playing. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.